of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Here is the remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things within the heart which are considered to be obstacles in the path of self-realization. The remedy is the association of the Bhagavatas. There are two types of Bhagavatas, namely the book Bhagavat and the devotee Bhagavat. Both the Bhagavatas are competent remedies, and both of them or either of them can be good enough to eliminate the obstacles. A devotee Bhagavata is as good as the book Bhagavata because the devotee Bhagavat leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavat. And the book Bhagavata is full of information about the personality of Godhead and His pure devotees who are also Bhagavatas. Bhagavata book and person are identical. The devotee Bhagavat is a direct representative of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. So by pleasing the devotee Bhagavata, one can receive the benefit of the book Bhagavata. Human reason fails to understand how, by serving the devotee Bhagavata or the book Bhagavat, one gets gradual promotion on the path of devotion. But actually, these are facts explained by Srila Narada Deva, who happened to be a maidservant son in his previous life. The maidservant was engaged in menial service of the sages, and thus he also came in contact with them. And simply by associating with them and accepting the remnants of foodstuff left by the sages, the son of the maidservant got the chance to become the great devotee and personality Srila Narada Deva. These are the miraculous effects of the association of the Bhagavatas. And to understand these effects practically, it should be noted that by such sincere association of the Bhagavatas, one is sure to receive transcendental knowledge very easily, with the result that he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. The more progress is made in devotional service under the guidance of the Bhagavatas, the more one becomes fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The messages of the book Bhagavata therefore have to be received from the devotee Bhagavata. And the combination of these two Bhagavatas will help the neophyte devotee to make progress on and on. Translation: by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Should I say a few words? Or we have okay. Yesterday, Guru Kripa Prabhu, he was also talking about this principle. Here we're talking about Srila Narada Deva, how he took birth as Narada Muni, simply by taking the remnants of foodstuffs from the pure devotees and by being in their association. So Guru Kripa was mentioning how us Westerners, our births in the West was not a very good birth, and how fortunate those are to take birth in India. And this, for some of us, especially in the early days of ISKCON, was, we could call, a sticky point. Because Prabhupada was always saying that if you don't complete your business, you can take birth in India. Well, for myself and some others, that was a frightening idea, because my only understanding being in India was I was sick. Over the whole time I was with Srila Prabhupada, I was sick. So when I left India, and I left Prabhupada's service at the end of 1973, I in the West, I began to become healthy again. 8 months later, I'm back in New Vrindavan, the very place I became Prabhupada's servant, and Brahmananda was there as his secretary, and again, Prabhupada's servant was gone, Satsvarup Maharaj. So Brahmananda said the same thing. It was just deja vu. The day before Prabhupada left, he came up to me. Second time this happened, and he said, "Do you want to be Prabhupada's servant?" He said, "We're going to India." And now I was married, my wife was pregnant, and I'm living in a Prabhupada hut in New Vrindavan. And I was weighing, stay here in New Vrindavan in this little mud hut, go to India with Prabhupada. For some of you, it might have been an easy choice. For me, I thought, and I said, I'll go to India. Anyway, we came back to India in 1974, September, for the Fox opening. Prabhupada was very sick, I became very sick, everyone was getting sick. And these Prabhus and so many others, they're just working away. Anyway, time passed, and after we came back to America, now we're in Hawaii. And on a morning walk on what was called Magic Island, Prabhupada said Hawaii was paradise. He said heaven on earth. For those of you that have been there, that's a little bit true. It's like heaven on earth, Hawaii. Prabhupada would take his morning walks and the sea breezes blowing. You could see everyone's dhotis blowing with the trade winds in Hawaii. And again, Prabhupada's talking about this principle. If you don't finish your business, then by the mercy of the Lord, you can come back and take birth in India. Well, now there's myself, Paramahamsa Swami, and Nitai, who was his Sanskrit editor at the time. And somehow or other, I was actually the senior devotee in Prabhupada's entourage, which is interesting. And we had all just come back from India, all having malaria, dysentery, jaundice, the usual things. And we all just look at one another and we're like, we're doing all this and we have to come back to India next life? Like this is our reward for devotional service, is to take birth in India. And they're poking me because I was the oldest in our group. Ask Prabhupada, do we actually have to take birth in India? Is this, if we're not going to be Krishna conscious? And we didn't, at that time, after 4 years or so, we figured out it's going to take more than one lifetime. As years go by, you realize it's going to take more and more and more years than one lifetime. But we were thinking maybe a few lifetimes, but we didn't want to take birth in India. So they're saying, ask Prabhupada, do we have to take birth in India? And I never like to ask Prabhupada questions because you could just get that look, like, you fool. And I didn't like that look. I had learned over time, 2 years. So I didn't ask. And the walk went on and it finished. Then we get back into the car. And in this car ride, because we were all going back, the three of us with Prabhupada, the driver was there. And then Prabhupada's sitting in the front seat. And myself, Nitai, Paramahamsa, we get into the back seat. We're like the Three Stooges, in the back. It's an American comedy group. No, I can see. So, again, they're poking me from both sides. I'm in the middle. Ask Prabhupada. This is how much we feared being in India. Ask Prabhupada, do we have to take birth in India? So finally I said, Prabhupada? I said, on the morning walk, you were describing, Krishna consciousness, devotional service. If we don't finish up our business, we come back, we take birth in India, in a devotional family, wealthy, aristocratic. Yes. I said, well, my question is, do we have to take birth in India? Oh, no, he said, no, not anymore. He said, we have centers all over the world. He said, any one of these places, He said these Hare Krishna you can take birth in as a devotee, and we're like, oh, thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada. But actually, to be able to take birth in India, in a devotee family, there is nothing better. I mean, I see when I come here, for so many, you local Indians, it's so easy, everything seems so easy. Chant Hare Krishna, 16 rounds, finished, do the puja in the morning to the deities, done, Tulsi puja, take prasadam, go to work, come have your little tiffins. This is impossible. 40 years later, I can't do any of these things, I'm unable to do these things. So, I would be happy at this point in my life, I've arrived at this stage, probably because of bottled water, that I would take birth in India now. I think it would be okay. It's acceptable. Maybe I haven't had malaria. I've been here 4 years, living in Govardhan, living Mayapur, living in Vrindavan. So it's working out by Srila Prabhupada, even within this lifetime. So now I get a glimpse. Although it would still be nice to take birth in a good devotee family, perhaps somewhere in the West. It might still be nice. Surabhi Prabhu, if you're ready to. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Good. Hare Krishna. It was brought to my attention that you have been here for a week and all you senior God brothers have a good time talking about the old days and stories with Prabhupada. I said, but there's so many new disciples, there's so many young devotees here. And they have to hear the stories, how we came out of the woodworks, how we lived in a very miserable world, and then Prabhupada came by and took us. But as I was here, and I was walking around meeting so many old friends and also young new disciples would come up to me, and they would ask a lot of questions, and they were inspired by, what the sacrifices that we had made. And then I asked questions to them. I said, well, where are you from? And I found out that many of them, they actually were born from devotee parents, or they came from very pious backgrounds in India as well as around the world, because a lot of Indian people left and went to America, to England, many parts of the world. And some of them became devotees from birth. Actually, they were born, either their mother or their father was a devotee. And they had to hear all these stories from us. And then I saw the purity in them. It's like 2-3 generations after us. And this is what this movement has become. Actually, we are getting a whole bunch of very pure people here that can chant and can actually hear the chanting. They can listen to the name, and their faces are very, very clean, very beautiful. And then, but they want to know from us, because we were with Prabhupada. And even though they're disciples of new spiritual masters, Srila Prabhupada is our grand guru. He is for everyone, because all the books, or most of the books, are all written by him. Everybody studies the scriptures from Prabhupada and teaching us the basics and the values of Krishna consciousness. So I was sitting last night and somebody said there's one devotee, he's very young and he likes to speak to you, or he likes to ask some questions. I had a devotee said, oh, my Guru Maharaj told me to go to you and ask for blessings. And I was overwhelmed because I wasn't used to that, to have these young, pure souls coming to me. We always looked at ourselves as being slightly contaminated with a past that could pop up any time, and then Maya would be around the door to take us away again. And some of it succeeded and some failed. But this kind of getting together here and seeing probably for the last time so many God brothers and God sisters and telling their stories about how they came to Srila Prabhupada, for us of course is extremely important. But then someone said, well, what about the young ones? What are you talking about for them? What inspiration can they have to continue and also do the same what we did to Prabhupada, or how we try to serve Prabhupada? And then it's like something that I never really thought about, because we have the spiritual masters, they have their students, their disciples, but they are curious because Srila Prabhupada is so central in everything, and they want to hear from almost everyone what it was to be with Srila Prabhupada. So it's what did it, like you can see with Guru Kripa, he's a tough guy, and Prabhupada got him to do anything. And not just anything, he gave him spiritual life, and he gave him a service. And he took that service at heart, just like Srila Prabhupada got his instructions to go to the West, although it looked like an impossible situation. And he just did what he was asked to do. And in the same way, myself and many others, Gunarnava, Dhananjay is there, all of the people here in Vrindavan, sitting here, they were all told something, or at least they knew what they had to do to please Srila Prabhupada. So I was telling that story, that what you can learn from this is that even though fallen entities like us, and you are very lucky because you're born with decent parents. Many of us came from families that didn't exist, or just, if we were lucky, we still had one mother or one father somewhere. And I said, you have a very high level birth, and your service can be done very simple and very pure from the very beginning. And you should always keep that, because we didn't have that. We were constantly struggling with our past. It was always coming back. And Prabhupada, he took these qualities that we had when we were young or where we failed in, and he would bring them out and engage us. The things that some of us, we were trying to make a career in our lives, then he would say, in my case, he would say, you should just do it for Krishna. So we had talents. A lot of those early devotees were very talented, and you can see what they have accomplished. But without Prabhupada, nothing would have happened. They would all end up miserable, like a failure, or the worst conditions you can imagine what we ended up with. There's a lot of genius people on this planet that just disappear because they have no guidance. They don't have a spiritual master. They have great ideas about ideals, but it's just wasted because they don't know what direction to take. So being born first generation, second generation, and now I can see this third generation, very pure young disciples of the new spiritual masters, and always Prabhupada. So that was basically something I wanted to bring out as an encouragement, and that this should be for the young and the old. It is for everyone. The other thing is that, coming back to some talk we had yesterday, and when I told my story about getting instruction to design the temple, people were asking, how did Prabhupada know? You just came there and you happened to sit. Actually, I don't know. Now, he may have inquired about my past, what I was doing. I was in Amsterdam, and I helped a little bit because I was asked to do so. First thing was to put in that big floor so that the devotees wouldn't catch a cold. And then later on I was asked to paint something, or maybe I had paint the name first. And Dhananjaya was there. And then little things like that. But I wasn't into it. I was quite critical about everything. I felt the living standard was low, and it was too miserable, too cold. But the devotees took it. They would go out in the market with those wheelers full, I don't know how they call them, bakfiets. It's a bicycle with a big, in the front. They would go to Kinkerstraat, and then all the merchants, they would put all the vegetables in, and here they are again. And then carts full of food would be driven back to the temple, and then cooking for the hippies, the prostitutes, whatever walked in. And in those days, everybody had long hair, and they have if you have long hair and you're not a lady, the guys, they let it go a little bit. So they had different creatures there living, and they would come to the temple to get shaved up, but only to get rid of their problem. So I remember Bhumadev, he had a duty, like at least 2 or 3 every day, in the morning or in the evening, or whatever. He had this buzzer, and he was just, and you saw what was in the hair there, and I was going like, whoa, what a life. And some became devotees, But so many people were fed with prasadam. In the morning, Mangalarti was crowded because the hippies had no place to sleep, and it was cold, so they would come to the temple, get free breakfast. The prostitutes were just there because they had their night duties or whatever, and they would come, and they were all. That was.
The system in Holland, when you get something, you need to put your old thing out, and someone put an old bed out. So these prostitutes, remember that? They brought a bed.
Oh yeah. The thing is that in Amsterdam, people would, when they don't need it anymore, they would put mattresses in the street or old sofa sets and chairs. And then the prostitutes would bring it to the temple, because they saw the devotees sleeping on the floor. They said, I got a mattress for you. Oh, what kind of mattress? And Dhananjaya actually felt quite at home in between all these people. And he was just continuing his preaching, very serious, very Scottish. And that is what happened there. Then, so I saw that, and I was, I think this is pretty interesting. But what took me to Krishna, or at least when I got interested, is they had the little books there. And it started when I was in Hong Kong just a couple of weeks ago. There was a couple, they just had a honeymoon. One boy from Argentina and one girl from France. And she was one of those lucky ones whose mother was a devotee, and she spent time in Mayapur in school. And the boy, he looked very very pure, like very simple, like So he came just from normal family, but his mother also, they collected the books. There was always books of Prabhupada on the shelf in their house, in Spanish, I guess. And he started reading, and I asked him, I said, what was the books that he said? Oh yeah, he said that I got attracted to Krishna consciousness by the books. But he had never seen a devotee, he had never been out, his mom had some books there. And then I said, well, what was the book that turned you on most? He said, well, then he mentioned 3, and one of them was Going Back, and there was a few, those small little books that were written specially. And then it took me, and then I remembered that I got a little book, and I read it. It was Easy Journey to Other Planets. And that totally changed my life. So that's when I started thinking about Krishna, or the possibility that there is a God. And for just one simple reason, that in there Prabhupada said that God is a kid. He's a young, very healthy, beautiful young boy. And then I was thinking that if we're living in the perverted world here, what do we adore? It's the young people. These are the only people that fall in love. Everybody else struggles through